Today's episode discusses rape and suicide. In the UK, you can get mental health support from the Samaritans at 116 123 or from Rape Crisis at 0808 500 2222. If someone announced that they had got spontaneously married in Vegas to the son of an oligarch, what would your first thought be? Hello and welcome to The Spills, a queer pop culture chat show from Gaystar News. I'm journalist Helen Meriel Thomas, and today we're talking about the Academy Award-winning film Anora and how it portrays sex workers. So I've invited one current sex worker and one former sex worker to discuss the film with me. So Anora is basically a fairy tale gone wrong. It explores the themes of obviously sex work, money, class, and the American dream. Some have said that this is a really empathetic portrayal of sex work, and that the director Sean Baker's way of portraying Mikey Madison as Anora is very kind and non-judgmental, which is good. But others have said that it's quite a hollow characterization of sex work and quite a disappointing ending as well. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Averi. I like to say that I'm a Jack or Jill of all sexy trades, and I am a stripper.
Okay, and Giap.
Hi everyone, I'm Giap. I am a conscious kink sex educator and a retired pro dominatrix.
Okay, guys. So what did you think of Anora, first of all?
I had to kind of separate myself from watching it as just a general consumer and a sex worker. And when I put both opinions together, I still decided I'm going to stay neutral, closer to pejorative on that, I guess.
I got the ick. I was on the flight to Thailand when I first saw it, and I think it was like 10, 15 minutes in, I was like, just the ick, just the first ick of, and I think it was the scene where she was dancing on the guy and she was like, yeah, let's go for a fag after this. And to put like what you were saying, Avery, like separating the two. Mm-hmm. And I think the ick within me was the remembrance of the disassociation in my body when I was working and wanting to kind of like I'm not, in my body in doing this work. I'm waiting for this to finish so that I could go out and feel human again. Mm-hmm. So I switched it off and I think I watched cartoons for the rest of the plane. But it's my go-to nervous system regulation. Mm-hmm. But watching it again this morning, still a little bit of the ick. And like you said, Avery, breaking it down in two parts. As a consumer, I think later on I was like, oh, this is interesting because they're now having fights. And as a consumer, I'm like, oh, what the fuck's going on here? But as a retired sex worker, I felt like it didn't portray enough of the complexity that a young sex worker, female sex worker, will have to move through in order to even be in that situation. I think at the beginning it comes across like this romanticization of, having a way out of sex work, and you hit the jackpot and being excited. But then there's the other side of the psychological side, which is what I'm really interested in. So I am in two minds. I say I have less of an ick, but disappointed. That's probably my words. So I'm very disappointed in the film because there are, as you know, for me, there is a danger of over fetishizing sex work and glorifying it, and maybe leading the younger generations that it's easy money or it's you can meet clients like this, because that's not always the case. And I think that's what the movie doesn't portray, that it's not, I think directors have to be a little bit more cautious about how they're advertising or creating these content, especially when they're using younger girls.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective.
For sure.
Does that trigger any thoughts for you, Avery?
Absolutely. We know this because we've been in the life. We're watching it. Well, this isn't realistic. I could watch it and take it with a grain of salt. But for people that aren't in the life, they're going to watch it and going to think this is easy money. You don't have to have X, Y, and Z wits about you. You can go into the club, kind of seemingly not knowing a huge amount. You can meet a customer with this kind of stature super easy, and he's going to take you out of the life and show you the high life, and that's so unrealistic. It's rarely going to happen or be offered to you. It's going to be offered to you, but it's not going to be real. That's number one. Number two, it's not going to be a relatively-ish handsome young guy. It was just so unrealistic in many different ways. It's not going to be him. It's not going to be him.
And if it is, you should be questioning it.
If it's him, worse. If I were going to marry a customer and leave sex work behind, I think I'd want it to be someone in their 60s, not 24, 25.
He's supposed to be 21 in the film.
Lord Jesus. What?
Do you know the film portrayed it as if he lost his virginity to her? Like, that's how I saw it, like he's or very inexperienced with sex. And I thought about the psychological side of two young people having a transactional relationship but masking it as pleasure, right? Because you're masking your pleasure and your arousal, but actually, you know, the guy wants to stay in America and escape his family, and she wants to escape sex work. That's what it came across, that she wanted to escape sex work, but not realizing that it's not his money. And I'm just wondering how many young girls are still walking into, you know, a vanilla relationship thinking, oh, he works in a bank, you know, he'll take care of me. Life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And sex work definitely doesn't work that way, even though it's more open to be transactional than in a vanilla relationship.
I mean, it's interesting you're talking about like her sort of naivety going into the relationship, because so Averi, you're 26, so you're not too far off her age, but I think those 3 years between 23 and 26, do you think that at 23 you could have made a decision like Annie does in the film?
I'm going to keep it real. I'd like to think I wouldn't have gone to that extent, but I think if a customer would offer me something on a smaller scale, maybe a weekend or something less scary, but like I said, I still wouldn't have ever been interested in a 20-something-year-old customer. Like, that's just so unreliable. It doesn't seem dependable. And that's just not where I, as a sex worker, think the money is going to be. So I wouldn't follow through with that. But
take the cash
as a younger
around.
worker, it's easier to make mistakes. But I'd like to think that all my stripper mummies around me would have said something. That's a question. Where were her friends? Where were her friends? Where was anyone to say, you sure? Like, even as a plot device, it could have been nice to have someone question her choice rather than just be like, woo, girl, thrust out into the arms of a literal stranger that you met last night. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so when you guys were both working, did you feel as though you had more support from, you know, older women around you that was not portrayed in her life at all?
I definitely didn't. And I actually first of all, I love that for you. Like, I'm actually so amazed and love the transition of sex workers as it is today from where I came from. But I totally understood why she did what she did, and it's probably the things that I would have done as well. Like, most of the women that I worked with, we all went there because we had responsibilities. Some of us couldn't get out of the cycle of the money. It's, you know, some of us had addiction, some of us had family to take care of. And the dream, especially when you're working 7 days a week, and I guess I'll just talk for myself, feeling an inch of as a human and not as a transaction or a mask or a tool for someone else's pleasure meant the world to me. So to have someone to even present, I see you as a woman, as a human being, and I want to, you know, offer whatever this experience with you, or I want to be in a real interaction, a real union, that meant the world. And, you know, I know a woman who left sex work because she met her partner like the week later, like he was like, I'm getting you out of here. She left and she never turned back. And that was just, actually, let me not lie, that was fucking me, okay? So I met someone when I was sex working, moved in with him, like this total stranger, and then we are best friends. And we did have a relationship, but I came out of it. So it did happen. It obviously took a toll on my relationship, but what I mean is I was so desperate. Like, I would come out of a client and I was so desperate just to be human that I would have lunch with a client, you know, and not be paid. It's when you're in, day out, and then you make the money and you know, give it to your family for survival and stuff like that, you no longer be like recognize what does it mean to have your own decisions. What are your decisions, your choices, and your pleasures on your terms outside of the working environment? And that makes you maybe judge things differently, you know, and not so grounded. Because if I think I had more support outside, and I always joke that if I had maybe came from a different family or I had different privileges, I might have not made those decisions, and I might have been able to be grounded to make everything transactional and still keep some, I don't know, parts of me. Yeah. But a lot of me died during sex work, if that makes sense.
Do you think that you would have that support now, Avery, in the club?
I mean, I've had support because a lot of the people that I worked with, especially when I started, they were older than me. Like when I say my stripper mummies, I'm talking about the other strippers I know that are 39, 45 up, and they've been in the club since like the noughties, and not like they taught me everything I know, but when you're a baby stripper, you're watching and learning and you're fucking observing everything you can to get the hustle knowledge. So I learned from them in that kind of way, but I don't know, at the end of the night, if we see that someone's going to leave with a customer, just be like, hey, you sure? Just check in. Similar to how we would in the civ world if we're going on a date or something. I'm going to this place with this person, this is their number, or if you don't have their number, share a location, something like. That's what we do when we're leaving the club if someone's going to go home with a custody. So I'd like to think that if I were in a situation where a dashing young customer is coming to offer and take me out the life, then I'd like to think that someone would be looking out for me, either older or just anyone in the club. I do it with like girls that I don't particularly get along with in the club, like girls that we don't speak but we don't hate each other. It's just, oh, I see she's going home with someone, you're going to be all good, amazing, just make sure you text someone when you go home, because I still want to see you at your shift tomorrow and next week. I want to make sure you're here safe.
If someone announced that they had got spontaneously married in Vegas to the son of an oligarch, what would your first thought be?
The initial reaction would honestly be just the stripper excitement. Yeah, bitch, you fucking got that bag. You got married in Vegas, no prenup, bitch, you're about to get it. And then probably to myself, because it'd be a bit rude to say to someone, I'd be thinking, oh my fucking God, is this going to be okay? Is she going to be okay? I hope she gets to milk it for as long as she can, get as much as she can, or if it's like, I hope the transaction is successful, and I hope whatever relationship they've chosen to have with each other is fruitful, but for both of them, whether it's any romantic involvement or if it's just strictly financial, more of a long-term sugar baby arrangement. I'd hope for that. But yeah, I'd be in two minds, but outwardly I'd still have the stripper excitement, like the girls did in the film. I love that part. That was really supportive.
Yeah. I think we all want that for our sisters, right? Like we're all in it together. And like you were talking about, you know, having the stripper mummies, and I wonder if it's different when you're, you know, doing dom work versus it being in a club, because there is that community. But when you're doing solo work, we don't have that community. And I think we will all celebrate our sisters. And a part of me, if it was someone younger, like if we were working the same, you know, club or agency, and you told me that, I'd be like, great, but let's put some risk management in, you know, like let's just think about what we're going to do, the what ifs, let's not get excited, great, no prenup, you know, let's get that legally, you know, like I would have to be really cautious and still celebrate, because there's a thin line of, especially in sex work, that you're not hating another person's success, right? But then, like any other sister, if you come across too worrying and stuff like that, people, depending on their joys and where they are in their life, they could take that the wrong way. And trying to be mindful and respectful of that. So it's, but yeah, I'll be thinking no prenup, but I need this like legalized in New York. And, and if anything happens, like I'll take my money and support your legal fees, like when you get back, so that we can just figure shit out because of stuff like that.
Yeah, well, she kind of leaves with like, you know, the 10K that she gets at the end of the film. Spoilers, sorry. The 10K she gets at the end of the film, I think is kind of ironic, because when things are really exciting with Vanya at the start, and he like first offers her the week-long exclusive relationship, which first of all, 15K for 1 week is dog shit payment.
Wow. Wowzers.
I was like, and She said her response when he says, "Oh, 15's fine." Her response is, "I would have done it for 10." And then at the end, she just walks away with 10K.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like quite a. I mean, we'll get to the ending because it's so sad. But first of all, do you think that Anora was a accurate portrayal of a stripper escort in your experience?
I am probably like, I'm not going to say like I'm the worst person, but I would just say when I was in her situation, that could have easily been me. That's the truth. It could have easily been me because I'm thinking, and even actually when I came out of like sex work, the idea of the people that I would date, where are you working? What is your financial income? Do you have a car? Do you have a house? All of this thing is, you know, and I talk about it in the past with you about cultural programming, about a woman's need to survival. And that means my cultural upbringing is, my core values is determined, my value of a woman as a woman is determined by my partner's net value. So therefore, I'm always looking at how is a man going to financially support and provide for me. And because of these cultural programming and upbringing means that whether I'm sex working or in a vanilla relationship, I'm always looking about that. So if I see a wealthy guy who is showing abundance and who is seeking this, and I'm young and naive, I'm going to jump on it thinking that I'm investing in a long-term commitment. Now, outside of sex work, I did the same fucking thing as her. I was dating a guy thinking, oh, he has this amount of properties, and not thinking, well, all these properties means there's debt because you're not paying them out cash, right? Unless you're fucking doing something illegal. But yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to be the wifey material, and then, you know, then he's going to pull a ring on it. And he's a douchebag, and it didn't work out. But so in the normal day, even though I understand transaction, I understand sex work, and I understand how men work, it didn't mean that I was grounded in real life. So when you take the reality of, you know, the makeup of a young woman looking for a better future through the need of a man's financial income, we are always bound to make shitty decisions like that because we don't have our own independence. So we're going to look for an easy way out that may seem secure. And I don't know what Anna's background is. I mean, she looked like she could have been like half Asian or stuff. But again, you know, we're not getting into that. But let's just, I mean, and she has like a very Italian New Yorker accent. But if we think about that type of culture, if that is the seed of it, then yeah, maybe her upbringing is that a man is going to take care of you, and therefore your role is to keep him locked, whether through your feminine sexual energy, and that will be your gateway to a better life. And that kind of feeds into your decision of, I don't know, doing dumb things. Because he was 60-year-old and he was ugly, you just be transaction. But because he's young and you're like, I'm marrying a young guy, this could be my way out. Your fantasy overrides your reality and your ability to think intentionally.
So in that sense, it's maybe quite a good portrayal by the filmmaker.
I mean, you know, I did say that it definitely came across like Punter's vibe.
Yeah.
So he's very experienced with sex workers. I would say that, but it is very one-sided. And I don't think, you know, maybe Avery, you know, like we said that your relationship was so different to mine. And with the different generation as well. I don't know if that's a decision that someone at that age would do today, but definitely when I was, you know, over 15 years ago, majority of us would want to just be human and be a woman again, and we would most likely make those decisions.
So what do you think, Avery? Do you think she seems like a realistic stripper?
I can say yes and no. I agree with absolutely everything you said about how we make decisions out of survival, but often they're not active decisions.
Yeah.
They're just happening for us in that sort of way. I can't say, like I said earlier, I can't say that I wouldn't do what she did, either 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I can't even say that I wouldn't now. Do you know what I mean? I'd like to say that, but you never know when you're in that situation. You never know what situation you might be in as well. I've seen other strippers, baby strippers, make similar decisions to her, whether 6 months or 4 years ago. So I could say, yeah, I guess it is a realistic representation in that way, but also so many parts of the story were just so impossible to fathom in real life that it was just like, oh, well, that wouldn't really happen, would it?
Yeah. I think we get lost as well in the film because some things are like dragged out, like her being, tied up and violent. And I'm just thinking like subconsciously, when she was tied up and bent over, and it just gives me creep rape vibe.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Which comes back to your ending.
Yeah.
It's just these scenes, I don't know why. Like, why and what for? Like, why and what for do you want the audience to look at? Because for me, what it draws is some bad decisions that, forget about the sex work side, but as a young girl, having a dream of living the high life, the party life with someone, and then not thinking coherently, and now being in a dangerous decision of possible rape. And that is actually how I ended up being sexually raped, because of these, the things that she's going through psychologically. So I think every young girl, young woman, whether you're sex working or not, is that how many times do we meet a guy, go to this fabulous party, and have a really good time, and it's fun, but then we end up in shitty situations where we're abandoned and left in a dangerous space. Right? That is, I think most young girls or women can say that they've been in that situation. So to see that on screen, forget sex work or not, that is a real representation of what women go through every day. All because we are infatuated by the idea of fun, pleasure, where this fantasy, this romanticization that this is real life. And actually, nothing is, and until you've been wounded for really, I think, over and over again, we don't really understand how to discern from these risks.
Absolutely. Discernment is like the greatest thing I think being in sex work has given me as a gift. Like almost fuck the money I've made. Discernment has taught me so much. I'm able to meet people in civilian life, in sex work, and get a feel from them really in the first 3 seconds. And if I feel something in my stomach, you're out of here or I'm out of here.
Yeah. Intuition.
Yes.
Will save
and
your
I
ass.
didn't have that. When did I get into sex? When did I get into stripping? I think 21. I didn't have that at 21. Now I have that, and it's on 100% all the time. And that might sound like bad for my nervous system. I think it's great for my nervous system because I know who I can trust and who I can't.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what the film is missing, is that if you're talking about, portraying empathy for sex work, or even if, someone out there wants to make a sex worker positive film, talk about this life skills as female sex workers have. As a dom, you learn about your boundaries, your needs, you learn about your yes, your no's, what does it mean to turn a client away, and, to actually turn money away. All of these life skills that every young girl, woman should have, autonomy of her own body and her own pleasures. These are the things that I think sex work positive movies should portray, and not just, I'm just having the lime life of this romanticization of a guy's going to save my life. I don't think that's actually positive, nor does it, and I'm not, saying, I'm not advertising, go out there and be a sex worker, because if I had the choice, I probably wouldn't do it again.
You've touched on something which I really wanted to talk about, which is the tie-up scene. So I think this whole sequence really bothered me. A, because it went on for way too long, but B,
uncomfortably long.
It's kind of portrayed as this like really funny section of the film, and a lot of the reviews I've seen, they're like, oh, and this section was hilarious, it's played like a farce, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like a joke to me, because whether that was the director's intention, that is what a lot of sex workers will have actually experienced against their consent. And she's in some senses kind of portrayed as almost lucky that it doesn't get to, it's like the idea that she might get raped is treated as a joke. It's like, no, like she is right to be scared that she could get raped in that situation. And so I don't know why they chose to make that whole section a joke.
But there's a scene where he says afterwards, but you weren't, raped. And she was like, but I could have been. And he said, but I'm not a rapist. And like, it's the idea that men think, oh, but you weren't, and that's okay. The fear that a woman goes through in that moment, like stays, like the trauma that you have to try to release and move through. For a woman to make a decision to show up for a shift as a sex worker, especially in a private setting, you're risking your life. Like every day you're risking life. And forget sex work, but let's just talk an average day, young girl, go on a date and go home with a guy. Again, you're risking your life. Going to a party and then an after party where there's loads of guys, again, you risk yourself, your freedom, your body of potentially being raped. That's not a joke. It's something that most of us have experienced. Losing the power to even have your hands to run away and being exposed. She's in her underwear, for fuck's sake.
I
right?
hated that. She's in her underwear the whole way through that scene, basically for no reason.
Right, and I think subconsciously, and maybe I'm thinking too deep into this, but to have her tied up, bend over, right, and he's more enough pressed against her, that is an erotic scene.
Yeah.
Right? And some people fetishize over rape as well. So you're actually portraying that and to make it funny, you're fetishizing, rape, consent, non-consensual play, like in the kink space, as if this is something to air on TV. Let's test out what society thinks of this. And I don't know who says that, oh yeah, that's funny, because if majority of it is women saying that's funny, are we laughing about it because that's our reality and we have to laugh rather than cry? Or is it more men saying that's funny because, at least I didn't rape her? Like, does that excuse your behavior of actually putting a woman in a state of fear? So what is this, like, who are you? Like, who are you who's making these comments that it's a funny scene?
I feel like everything that happened in that sequence was excused because in the end she wasn't raped. Fuck everything that happened to her physically, emotionally, mentally. It doesn't matter because nothing happened in the end.
Yeah.
And they, even the gagging, it's like they didn't actually even need to add that because it just sort of added an extra 10 minutes of her suffering, basically, when actually they could have got to the point without having her be gagged. It is her being in her underwear, I think, is a really interesting point because I felt like, although it is a very beautiful film, it's filmed very beautifully, and I think Mikey Madison, the girl who plays the sex worker, I do think she does a very good job, but the male gaze is so overwhelming the whole way through this film. It's omnipresent, it's there the whole time, and there are so many scenes where she's just in her pants when she doesn't actually need to be. A lot of the sex workers I know, when they're not working, they are in, tracksuit bottoms.
And a big t-shirt.
Even my dom friends were in their fucking leggings. Why? We stopped doing that a long time ago, dressing for guys.
No.
Yeah. Even kind of towards the end, there's a scene of her looking out of the window at the snow, feeling really sad. And again, she's in her pants. Her client, if you want to call Vanya that, isn't even there anymore. So why is she just stood there in her pants? It's cold.
It's just remember, she's a whore.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a whore.
Yeah, because all sex workers just walk around in their underwear all day, obviously, which kind of adds to this fantasy view that the director Sean Baker kind of puts on the whole thing. It just feels like you said, almost like a kind of erotic fantasy of his idea of what it would feel like to really see a sex worker for who she really is, and explore her story while also sexualizing her.
Yeah, you're so right. Sorry, I was just ironic about that's the ultimate client fantasy, and they just want to see you for who you are, and they want to know the real you. And I'm like, please don't do that because you won't like it, and I will lose money. Please don't do that. And it's just. The whole thing about being known by people anyway is just so vulnerable, but being known by a customer, just sounds...
But have you seen there's a video game, is it where they're on live cam, Titch, or I can't remember what's it called, but the girls are just running around living their best life, living their life in their underwear, cooking and stuff like that, and they get the most views. And there is something around that's arousing for men to see a woman that they know is sex working, whatever, behind the scenes. There's something intimate that they lust over that. And it's almost in this film, it's very much the same. But not realizing that it's actually just another fucking mask. If we're walking around in underwear, there has to be some form of transaction here. Otherwise, it's not reality.
There were 2 moments that I thought were very real, or felt real to me. the moment when she's like, well, I think when she's like walking around the club vaping, I was like, that feels like it could be true. And the moment she's on the subway, like completely covered head to toe, falling asleep, that feels like it could be true. Which, like I say, I think that she did a good job, the actress, but it still feels very like I'm a man looking into her eyes. Like, it's not, I saw one YouTube comment that was like, I wish I could see Sofia Coppola's version of this film. Where she actually feels like a real girl and not a kind of the fantasy of Anora. But yeah, I wonder how you guys feel about the ending, because for me that was one of the most disappointing parts of it. So to recap, they get married, it goes wrong. The Russian parents say they're going to come and kind of basically force the annulment. And she has tried to resist all the way through. But again, anytime she tries to resist, she just gets kind of like bashed down and then ultimately rolls over and complies, like in the gagging scene. And then you get this again right at the end when she's about to get on the private jet to Vegas so that they can go annul the marriage in Nevada. And the Russian mother says to her, basically like, if you don't get on this plane, then I'm going to ruin you. I'm going to take all of your money. I'm going to take your car. I'm going to take your house. I'm going to ruin all of your friends' lives, all your family's lives. And I was expecting her to say, well, I don't have a house. I don't have a car. And, fucking try me, bitch, because I've got all this money in cash from when Vanya was sleeping with me at the start of the film. So I am going to fight it. And I thought she was going to walk off at the end of the film in her mink coat, like with bags of cash.
Would have been nice.
But she just like gets on the plane and is like, yeah, okay. And I was like, why does she not fight that? Because she's got nothing to lose. What did you guys think in that scene?
I also wanted her to basically say, fuck you, walk away, I'm going to fight this. But unfortunately, that did feel like a very realistic moment to me. Like, sex workers largely don't have the resources to fight something like that legally. Like, she's thinking, oh, I've just lost my whale, I'm going to have to go back to the club. She hasn't got the time to, like, within herself. Like, it would have been nice to have some more depth, especially in that moment, but that felt quite real to me, that she would have just gone, actually, I can't do it. So she just got on the plane.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Again, we talk about the waffling in between of dragging certain scenes that didn't need to be there. They could have filled it up with something more, like with substance. And I think the substance is, what did she do with the money that she did have? Yeah. Right? What is her financial circumstances? And then I think it is, like you said, most sex workers don't have resources. Our time is our money, and money spent fighting and not working means it's cutting into our resources of survival. It's interesting, I think we have a fantasy that, prenup means, all win and stuff like that. And we see guys who marry like female celebrities get that. So we want the same, right? We want to have ours. But I think in that moment, there is this reality check, like just before the mum comes out, he says, so what do you want me to say? Like, we're doing this. So he comes out of his fantasy that I don't have anything and my life depends on my parents. And that's when she realizes, oh shit, like I have been grooming this child, because that's what she's done. She's groomed him with sex and pleasure to try to have this long-term life full of abundance, not realizing that even if he did leave his dad, which is what he promised, I'm going to leave my family and be an American, what does that mean for you? Are you going to continue sex work to take care of him? Because all that money is going to be gone. So when I see that clip of, shit, what the fuck have I done? Her fantasy gets destroyed, and now it's just about what can I get out of the situation I'm in. Like, lawsuit is a really long thing, and you have to pay up front. That's what people also don't understand. Prenup or not, you have to pay your solicitor fees up front, which she might not have. Even with that 15K if he gave it to her or not. That's not enough in the court of law. And their abundance. There's also, I think, shame. Like in that moment, like I think that's a reality check, that there's shame that I'm a silly girl. And that reality of I now need to solve this for my future. Going back home, having shame of other, your colleagues thinking, silly girl. Like nobody really wants to go through that. So it's reality to me. It's very realistic. I found it interesting, the last scene where it ends off. And I think that scene to me really hit home, because when you've lost everything, your dream, your fantasy, you've been, wasting time giving this little child pleasure, and you can't ever take that back, and now you're left with, a debt more enough because you've lost all that money that you could have made working. You want to have some power, and even though sorry for disclosure, but she sleeps with the guy in the car, it was her last grasp for some power. And that is realistic to me. I have slept with punters outside of work just to be like, it's my body, my pleasure. Again, it's about having that freedom of choice, which she hasn't had realistically, because it's an illusion, right, up to that point.
Yeah.
Totally. I saw the last scene the same way. Like, as much as I found that to be a disappointing ending, I really wanted there to be something after that. Like, while the scene was going, I was really watching it going, please don't end here, please don't end here. And then it fucking did. I totally have been where she was, where you to make that last grasp of power, to have control over your own body, especially if you are a full-service sex worker. You want to take control over your own body and just fuck who you want to fuck. And she's been through that whole traumatic experience over, how long was it overall?
Yeah, how long was she with him for?
Probably, I think 10 days, 2 weeks tops. I think the whole thing went on for.
Yeah, I think because she's kind of sleeping with him for a little bit of time before New Year's Eve, and then it's New Year's Eve that he kind of proposes.
Somewhere between 2 weeks and a month max.
Yeah.
So she's made very little. She's lost out on a lot of work.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of fresh trauma from this one client interaction that went on so long. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I would do exactly what she did. And Igor, yes, he was creepy, had lots of weird moments. When his character was first introduced, on my notepad that I was making notes on while I was watching, I had a likes and dislike column. I put, like Igor. 10 seconds later, don't like Igor. Because he said something really creepy and I can't remember what it was. I was like, don't like Igor. But overall, of the 3 men, he was the nicest to her. He wasn't nice, but he showed her basic human decency more than the other men did. So he wasn't nice, he just showed her basic human decency.
And isn't that interesting, how the director did this, that as women were looking at this, he's a nice guy, because you gave us a bunch of shitty guys, right?
Assholes.
Being human and treating someone as a human being is deemed as a privilege, right? We're so lucky that he's actually seeing me as a woman and he doesn't actually want to rape me. I thought, yeah, I liked him too, but because it's you go on a holiday and you think you're dating a guy who's really hot, and you come back home and realize he is not hot. It was a holiday vibe, because I didn't have enough variety. So, and that's what it felt like. But yeah, in that moment and I think people also miss, maybe it's something that the film doesn't do, is the things that you do, as women do to we know that sex is a form of getting your dopamine hit, right? So what happens when you're a sex worker and you go through a traumatic experience and all you know is the transaction of sex and the dopamine hit? The last thing you want to do when you've lost your money, your independence, your future, you need that dopamine hit. And it's not going to come from alcohol and drugs, it's going to come from sex. So you take what's yours. And I think that's what that last scene is that I need that dopamine hit because I don't even know how to process this. And I want it on my terms.
I feel sad that final moment is with Igor and she's crying into his arms, when I'm I wanted her to be crying in, if she even really has friends, which again is a criticism of the film. Like you said, Avery, where are her friends? Where's her, because you see her kind of having a few girls in the club that she clearly is fond of or are fond of her. But you know, would it have been nice to see her go see her mum or like?
Who is that lady she lives with?
No, who's the?
Yeah,
is that
who's
the lady
that
she lives
sister?
with?
Who is that?
Like, where's she? Like, because the only interaction you get from that friend she lives with or sister or whoever she is kind of like mildly judgmental, but like not seriously judgmental. It's just like there's an irritation where if that relationship had been developed a bit more, then if there was a pressure of or some hope as a viewer knowing someone's keeping an eye on this, someone will maybe notice that like she's gone AWOL when she's like running around New York trying to find him, like everyone's just like, oh, you know, who are these people, why are you here? Whereas no one's being like, are you okay?
Yeah, I think that's like a demonstration of like the disregard for sex workers because no one cares about our safety, where we are. People are judgmental, whether it's her sister, friend. Like she says, I'm going to be back on Tuesday. It's Tuesday now. Oh, it's a week. She doesn't ask, where are you going? Are you going to be okay? Who are you with? It's just literally silence out the door, bye.
But that was my reality.
For a lot of people, it is.
And I think a lot, for a lot of us.
It is. Like not everyone is able to be open with people around them, like friends or family.
It's really challenging that for me watching that and the isolation. It's weird because now that I don't know, dissecting it all, I'm like, there's a lot of reality, like my own lived reality to that movie. When I was reaching out to people and I was like, you know, I'm, you know, going away or whatever, I found even those who knew I was like working never asked questions. And as I processed, like after leaving sex work and going through therapy and stuff, I noticed that actually that's probably one of the most disappointing things, is that most of the people who say they love you or who care really struggle to accept what you're doing for survival, for work, especially if they are benefiting off it, right? Because then there's this guilt and stigma and shame around them. And within that, nobody asks questions. Nobody asks questions where the money's coming from. Nobody asks questions where you're going. They're just like, oh, that's just what Giap's doing. You know, she's just, you know, living her life, blah, blah, blah. And I think, you know, that's probably played a big part on my like suicidal attempts, because it was such a lonely career where I was doing all the transactional stuff. My body was the one that was, you know, benefiting. Everyone was benefiting from my body other than me. Everyone's benefiting from pleasure other than me. Everyone's benefiting from the money that I'm earning apart from me. So that scene where she had no one was very realistic to me. In my world, in my reality, I didn't have anyone that I could turn to, and I still didn't even when I came out of sex work. So it's sad, but that is the reality I think that most sex workers go through.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really great to hear your opinion, Avery, because you run a collective for unionised sex workers.
Awesome.
So basically, in your dream reality, would Anora be part of your collective?
I mean, absolutely. Like whenever I meet like other sex workers in any realm of sex workers, like out at events, or like sometimes we run into each other in the wild, and sometimes you can kind of just suss each other out by asking certain questions like, oh, who do you know? What kind of places do you hang out at? And where do you go party? You can kind of figure out that they're in the life as well. Like if I ever get the feeling that there's someone who is without community or could just need an extra shoulders to lean on, or even someone to just check in with when they're seeing clients, I always offer myself. I offer a group chat that we have of every single Cybertease performer that's performed both in real life and online that's just there. I want them to be able to have the option. Like I've been at a party before and met this awesome girl. She was so cool, and she was just telling me about her life in sex work, and I was like, hey, I think you need some like more friends, so like if this ever happens to you again, you have someone to talk to about it if you want to, or just for safety. And her and I talk sometimes now. Or she can come to me for help or advice, or I can come to her and vice versa. Like, I'd absolutely want that to be available for anyone. And I totally hear what you're saying, Gia. Like, your experience is, I think it's the majority of sex workers' experience. I think I've been incredibly privileged to have almost immediately have found what I saw to be an already available community of sex workers as when I started. And I've never been completely without anyone to talk to. Of course, it came to me that I have to feel comfortable coming to that person because I might not have known them, but I've always had someone to go to. And I'm also very fortunate that I can be out to my family. So if I say, I don't live with my family, but if I say, hey, I can't come to this person, a family member's birthday, because I've got to work at the club until 4 a.m. They understand. I've got a very understanding partner as well who will either wait for me until stupid o'clock or do check-ins with me. I have like group chats with other sex workers where we do check-ins saying I'm going to this place with this person until this time. I've even like called other sex worker friends while I've been out at the job or on the club just for safety. And it's real good to have, but it's not available to everyone, and not everyone's comfortable outing themselves. Not everyone wants to. People want to stay personal and private, which I get. Yeah. It's good to have options.
So basically more sisterhood.
More
sisterhood.
Especially for Anora.
Anora, come out.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me for The Spills, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.